Hi everybody and welcome to our latest live how-to video. I'm delighted, as you can see, to be joined by Amy today. Today we're going to be talking about team building, maintaining a good team, which is something part of Amy's area of expertise. So we're going to be looking at that in a minute, but as usual with any of these live videos that we do, if anyone's got any questions or any comments, please feel free to put them in the chat box and we'll cover them off when we can. This is obviously going to be broadcast across various social media platforms at the moment, but also it will be recorded and put onto our YouTube page, and obviously is available on social as well. So if anyone wants to find it at a later date, they can do. If you are watching it on playback and you do have any questions, feel free to send us them, and I can forward them on to Amy as well as we go through. So we have had a couple of technical issues with the presentation today, so I'm sharing it at my end. So like I've probably done a few times before, it's going to be a bit like a Downing Street press conference, I'm afraid, but I'm sure we'll get through it. Amy, shall I pass it over to you to introduce yourself, and then we'll crack on.
Well, I've actually got a slide that introduces myself, so I might as well stick the slideshow on.
Well,
hello, everybody. My name's Amy. So, if you want to click on, what does Boris say in the meetings? Next slide, please. So, introductions. Who am I? My name's Amy Gault. I run Splat Training, a Bachelor of Science in Outdoor and Environmental Education, and 20 years as an outdoor leader facilitating team events. So I've worked with all sorts of different teams, from corporate to young people from difficult backgrounds, all sorts of different types of teams. Hi, Lauren. So as the director of Splat Training, as many of you know, we also run first aid training. So the two things are a bit disparate, but they kind of make sense in my mind. But as well as doing the first aid training, we facilitate team development events and have worked with the likes of Hovis, Arla, and local borough councils. We've had people come from Coca-Cola and loads of different businesses that, surprisingly enough, do operate in the wonderful Northwest. So that's where I am coming from. Thank you, Michael. Next slide. I thought I'd start off the presentation with some top reads, really. I mean, I'm not the world expert on building teams. I'm borrowing from all sorts of different people that I've learned about over the years. So I thought I'd start off with those. If you want to take a photo of that screen, if anyone's interested in reading about team building, these are some of the best books that I've read in the past sort of 10 years or so. I like them because they're easy reads. They're actually intended to be easy reads. And team building doesn't have to be rocket science. It isn't rocket science. It's often quite instinctive to a lot of us, but we can get bogged down, so we just need a reminder from time to time. If you read the top one there, Patrick Lencioni, he actually does say the very same thing, that it's not rocket science. We just need to remind ourselves sometimes how to treat the people around us. So be alert to those who overcomplicate things, because they're often hiding behind complexity. Keep it simple. Next slide. So maintaining a good team, the formatting's all off as well, might I say, about this, because it's being shared not on my computer. So sorry, it looks a bit off. So what is a team? What we will cover, what is a team? We'll cover does a team need maintaining? We'll look at working together and how to do it, and getting to know your team and ideas for how you might do that. Spending time out, obviously. I'm going to say that spending time out with your team is a good idea. And what does good look like? We will come to that. So next slide. So starting, as you should, with a definition. So always making sure that you fully understand what it is you're talking about by defining it first. A team is a group of individuals working together to achieve a common goal. Okay, that's one of the most commonly used definitions, or that or thereabouts, of what a team actually is. So I'd like you to think about, who is your team? Some of you might be, I hate this term, but one-man bands. You might be micro businesses with only a couple of people. Who is your team? Maybe you've got family who support you. They're your team. Think of some people who are on your side, people that you talk about your work with, and people that want you to succeed. And also think about the fact that given that you are here, you are probably a member of one hell of a team. The very Northern Affinity that you are a part of, they are invested in your success as you are in theirs. So they are also your team. So think about your team. It doesn't have to be a work-based team. It could be networking, it could be family, etc. Next slide. Thank you. So when I was setting out to do this presentation, I did the standard, let's Google an image about teamwork, and came up with some various word clouds. So I had a good look around all the different word clouds that are all available. And actually I didn't agree with very many of them at all. So we've got this one, which I think I chose because it's got nice colours on it. It's got some fairly ordinary sort of words that are involved in teamwork there. Leadership's massive on there, and I think, yeah, leadership is important, but it's not the only aspect of a team. Everybody should surely be equal within that team. They all should have equal contribution. It's got some other sort of dull words in there as well, like marketing and business, that sort of thing. So I actually created my own word cloud, which I'm sure we can all add to as well. So I just want to share that with you. Next slide. I'll click on, there we go. So my favorite ones in here are probably the purple words: vulnerability, commitment, motivation, aim, and the pink ones, commitment, results, and teamwork. But they're all really important aspects of what I think working in a team is all about. It's really, really important that we think about it as a human endeavour. It's not just work-based, it's all about people. Could you click on? Thank you. Thank you. Oh, we've got a strange thing going on there. What's that middle picture doing, Michael?
I don't know. It's the same on my screen. It's disappeared by the looks of it.
Yeah, the picture disappeared. It was a picture of a pair of old boots. Okay, so the question is, does it need maintaining? Does your team need maintaining? So if you look at that first, the picture there on the left, you've got a really old computer. Would you ask your team to work on unmaintained technical equipment? Hopefully not. If you're pulling on your boots to go on a walk, would you expect them to work as well without giving them a spit and polish before you go out? Hopefully not, because they'll leak. And the other guy on there is a stonemason that I know, and they clean off and sharpen their tools regularly. They maintain their tools. Now, your team are your best tools, and probably also, if you think about it, they're your most expensive tools. Hopefully you put a lot of work into recruiting them carefully, okay, and you want them to last, so invest in them, look after them. Often people get a bit worried, don't they, about investing in their people. They worry about, if I spend all this money on training them and then they leave, then what's the point in that? Well, as one of Northern Affinity's own, Sarah Bradley, mentioned, I think it was a how-to recently, that the question really is not what if I train them and they leave. What if you don't train them and they stay? Then you're going to end up with a real duff team. So train them, invest in them, and then they're more likely to stay and actually be of value to you. Could you click on to the next slide? Thank you. So working, it's all gone wonky. Working together towards a common goal. Okay, if a team is supposed to be working together toward a common goal, what is that goal? Have you made it clear? Often teams aren't all doing the same job. They need to know in a simple, clear way where their tasks come together towards that common goal. The top level aims, missions, and values. Reiterate them and make it clear how they affect the day-to-day. So on the screen there, we've got some sort of high-level aims of some more famous businesses. I wonder if anyone can identify that first one: to empower every person and every organisation on the planet to achieve more. Anyone know whose aim that is?
Ooh. I don't know, Emma.
No? Well, I'm sure the people that work for the organisation definitely do know it. That one's Microsoft. This one, I think the clue's in the name for the next one. To organise the world's information and make it universally accessible and useful. Who might that be? Information accessible. Yes, that's Google's. And then the next one down is we aim to be Earth's most customer-centric company.
Oof.
Any guesses?
Oh God, that could be anybody. That Amazon.
Yes, it's Amazon.
Really?
Yeah. So those three organisations put together clear aims, and we've got an added one here, which I hope you do recognise there, Michael. A collaboration of dynamic northern businesses powering growth and development.
Yes, I am aware of who that is.
Good. So I think that's also a high level aim, and if we keep that in mind, that helps to remind all the members that actually what we're about is collaboration, growth and development, rather than passing referrals necessarily, or those sorts of traffic light systems or whatever. So keeping that overall aim in your mind as you're doing the work is a really valuable aspect of what motivates you to do the job the way you do it. Okay. We've clicked on. So you need to know the parts that the team that need playing for the team to achieve the goal. You need to make the roles really clear, and you need to communicate well and often with your team. So communicating well is a tough one. A lot of people don't really do it well. I don't know if you know that usually we actually only listen to a very small amount of what's being said. And we probably only hear about 23% actually of what's being said. So to get your message heard, you do need to repeat it quite often to get it clear. And I'd really say communicating well means using the correct channels, the channels that are appropriate both to the message and to the listener. So, for example, if you've got a part-time member of staff, don't send them an email on their day off and expect a response. Okay, you've got to use the right channels. Working together, as well as communicating well and clearly, we need to work out how to get to know each other. So if you're just working, you can't necessarily get to know each other, because if you're just focused on your computer screen and you're not looking up, or if you're looking up, you're under pressure and you might answer in a short way. It's not a great environment to get to know people. And the best thing is to know your team so that you can trust them, so that you know what their skill set is, so you know how they'll respond to people and how best to communicate with them, etc. So get to know your team by getting out with them. We'll come back to that in a little bit. But ask them how they want to work. And that doesn't mean to say, like, do what they say and always beholden to everything that they want. That's not going to be a great way of making all of the team happy. But compromise, find ways that you can achieve the aims that you've set at the same time as working in ways that suit more of the people. Be present. And that doesn't mean that you've got to be there all the time, because you absolutely can't do that as a team leader, as a CEO, as a director, whatever. You can't be there all the time. You've got too many other commitments. But what it does mean is when you are there, really be there. So talk to people, listen to what people have got to say. Don't be afraid to be vulnerable. Don't be afraid to be wrong and be uncertain. You don't have to be right about absolutely everything. I'm sure Karen Amos, I listened to her how-to recently, and she's pretty keen on helping you with that sort of thing. So being vulnerable and having those tough conversations, I think is Karen's expertise. So have a chat with her if you find that difficult, because it really does pay dividends. If you can be vulnerable, if you can make mistakes, that means that others can, which might not seem like what you're looking for, but in fact, allowing somebody to make a mistake, we all know it's a great place for learning. Okay, And what we certainly don't want is people hiding mistakes, because that's when everything goes wrong. Ask questions. You know, you've employed these people to do a job. Why are you paying them if you know all the answers? So ask and be collaborative. And motivate them appropriately. There's a lovely story, you've probably heard it, about a sales team with like a what do they call it, a prize to motivate people. And they're a really high-end business. They're doing great stuff, so they've got a lot of money to spare on motivating the team. So there's a sports car available this month for the salesperson who gets the most deals that month. And unexpectedly, the person they thought would be, you know, the best salesperson that month seems to not really be engaging with it, not really doing much, isn't pushing to win the prize. And somebody unexpected wins the prize, which is possibly a good idea. But the team leader comes to this usually really good salesperson at the end of the month and says, your figures are a bit off this month. What's gone on for you? Thinking, you know, maybe there's something terrible happened at home, etc. He says, oh, I'm just not in the least bit interested in winning a sports car. Yeah. So competition for some people doesn't work, and sometimes it does work, but make sure you've got prizes that actually will motivate your specific individuals. After a few conversations, they get together, find out that in fact this salesperson's daughter has just got a horse, and what he's most interested in is spending time with the horse and the daughter. And had he, you know, won a prize for a load of horsey equipment, that might have been much more an appropriate a prize to motivate that member of the staff team. Okay, next slide. Thank you. I think we probably all know who does it badly. So be careful not to do it like Ricky Gervais, the boss in the office. Don't expect too much from your staff. Okay, they work for you, they do not live for you. Sorry, it looks like it says don't give back. I don't mean that, but doing it badly would be to not give back. So do give back. Make sure that you give praise. Make sure that you reward people's behaviour. Don't be always right. Okay, if you're going to be always right, then people will just shut up and stop speaking. So if you have a meeting about let's throw some ideas around about this project, and people know you're just going to go, oh, well, I don't think so, let's do it this way, they'll just stop putting their ideas in. So again, why are you paying for their skill set if you think you don't need it? Careful not to set the wrong tone. We've got to think carefully about allowing banter. Sometimes it can be very, very painful. I know a lot of people really love banter, and to an extent it can be okay, it can be valuable, but extremely careful with it. You've got to be willing to challenge if people do go overboard with banter. So keep that character in your mind, try not to be him, but be aware that even the very best of us will at times do some of these things, okay? Especially those of us who think we'll never do that. We probably will, okay? So try and stay constantly present, constantly aware of your interactions with your team. So the next slide is about getting to know them, getting to know your team. How do you do it? Do you just leave it to happen naturally? Do you do those kind of high-end regular 360 reviews every few weeks or whatever, so that everybody's getting involved and getting to know each other? Perhaps you feel that's a step too far. Do you just have conversations, talk and listen to people, have honest and open interactions at work, or just take a trip down the pub sometime? That's okay too. However, we do need to be a little bit careful with the things like a trip down the pub or whatever, because you can actually just end up leaving certain people out. You know, there'll be certain people who can't come to the pub on an evening because they've got childcare issues or whatever. A trip down the pub will almost certainly leave out some of your team members. So make sure you can do that, but make sure you do some other stuff that bring them in as well during work hours. I would always say do it during work hours, otherwise it's not fair. I did a survey of businesses recently and asked them how people motivate their teams. The results were quite funny, really. They ranged from I feed them gravel, I make them tea, I make them laugh, but surprisingly few of them showed that they had put much thought into it. I did have a couple that were quite thoughtful and nice. So one of them said that they make sure they all know how valued they are by sending positive messages each week. I try to create an atmosphere that encourages cohesion, which I thought was lovely and thoughtful. But be careful of a constantly positive environment. There's a lot of value in sometimes a bit of conflict, a bit of discomfort. The next one somebody said was they motivate their team through building relationships and providing as much certainty as possible. I love and respect my team, which I thought was really lovely. I'd have loved personally to see something about being real with the team, showing vulnerability and leaning into difficult conversations. So showing that if I can have a tough time at work, so can they. Life isn't just about always being positive. It's worth trying to create an environment where honesty and conflict are proven valuable tools. So you can have a row and get over it like they do in a good marriage, they say. Next slide. Spending time out. So spending time out of the office is really important. You get to see a different version of people. So as I said, whether that's down the pub or doing something else, it's well worth making sure you do a variety of different stuff, because you will pick up surprising bits about people. I had a company came up to the farm last year, no, before COVID, the year before, and did one of our events. During the first sort of 10 minutes, I just witnessed this really lovely interaction. There's two women there that turned up in riding boots and breeches, so riding trousers, and one of them was the CEO of the company, and one of them was I don't know, a lowly office worker. But they spotted each other wearing these riding shoes, and suddenly had this lovely interaction whereby the CEO was saying to the other younger girl, "I didn't know you rode horses." Anyway, you know what people that ride horses are like. They then had a lovely long conversation about riding horses, and they bonded quite well over it. The girl had worked there for 5 years, and they'd never had this conversation. So just being out of their office environment in their scruffs meant that they actually got to know each other that huge bit more, and their relationship was changed forever, in a good way. So definitely worth spending some time out doing a variety of different stuff, so you really get an opportunity to get to know one another. Next slide, thank you. Oh, hang on, go on. Oh, okay. So once again, the formatting's a little bit off here. So it should say maintaining a good team, and I've circled and highlighted the word good, not ag. So it's important that we let people know what good looks like. I called this talk maintaining a good team. I've explained about why we maintain stuff. I think that's fairly straightforward, maintaining our tools. But why did I choose good? I didn't want to use the word productive, because that sort of really focuses too much, not enough on the human and too much on the product and the bottom line. And I think it's so much more than that. I didn't want to say happy team, because it's not always about being happy. I'm not really a believer that we should all pretend to be happy all the time. I think it's perfectly allowable to have a fallout, have a bit of conflict in the workplace, and that doesn't mean that there's anything wrong with the team. In fact, I believe it means there's something right with the team. So I went for good. So let's make sure the team have something to aim at. What does good look like? It makes everyone happier when they know what they've got to do to achieve a thing and what that that achieved thing looks like. So make sure that you've explained what good looks like. If we're not sure yet what good looks like, we can in fact experiment with what good looks like, and we can do that in a safe way. So this is where we come in. People like Yorkshire Team Building and all the other team building companies and mini games that you can download off the internet and do in the office, they are means to experiment with how your team behaves. So they're a microcosm of the workplace. Our team event is about getting people into a field and doing sheep herding with them. Nobody needs to know how to herd sheep in order to be good at, say, sales or something like that, or marketing. Okay, but they need to see how their team works and spot the pitfalls, if you like. So using mini games that have aims and outcomes and some strategy in the middle will help you to observe how your team responds. You and the team can see places where you might fall down. Don't focus on the task. It's not about sheep herding. Okay, it's about the way the team works together. Or you might spot ways the team might fail to communicate or might fail to draw quieter people into conversations. You'll observe and be able to challenge in an artificial environment that behaviours that are unhelpful. So it's fantastic to watch, to sit back and watch your team interacting when it's facilitated well. And essentially it's just a load of fun as well. So get out there and have a go at different things, even if it's just something you download off the internet at this stage. Have fun and watch the way you interact. Be careful if you're doing it as the CEO or director or the boss. Be careful, because you've quite possibly got a bit of a tendency towards taking over. That might be why you're in that role in the first place, certainly is for me. So be really certain that you're going to take a back seat and let the team get involved with this and observe it only. So don't forget to let people know what good looks like. If you don't know yet yourself what good looks like, then work with your team doing some mini games to figure out how you really want to communicate, how you really expect your team to behave. And if you could click us on to the next slide. Now, again, that one should have been a lovely animated slide where this this picture flies in and then it's supposed to fly away again. So there you would have my contact details. I'm on the Northern Affinity Mighty Networks. I'm also on LinkedIn, so you can get us that way. But if you are interested, pop onto the website www.yorkshire-teambuilding.co.uk. Pop your details in there. You can download a brochure, and we will send you a mini game and a cup of tea in the post. So that postcard there has got a mini game and a cup of tea attached to it. I'm really hoping the postman's not going to nick the cup of tea on the way. So that is it from me. Thank you very, very much for your time. Yorkshire Team Building, it'll make you laugh, make you tea, and make you think. Thanks very much. Cheers, Michael.
I think that's a great way to finish on that. So I'd be really interested to know kind of obviously how the last 15 months, 18 months, wherever we're on now, has affected teams from what you're saying in terms of their togetherness. I guess positive and negative.
Yeah, well, I think it's been interesting times, hasn't it? And I think different teams are experiencing different things. I have a lot of conversations with people around teams, and the survey I did recently where I said those people came back with ways that they're helping to motivate their teams. Very different, you know, some people saying things like, oh, we do a fun game over Zoom. I'm thinking, oh, I hope it is fun. And other people are just really used to working in those sort of technology-based environments anyway, and so it sort of barely had an effect on them at all. So I think it depends a lot on the job and the job that you're actually doing. But being on furlough and then or starting a job in a remote working world and then coming back to an office-based situation, so you've been doing the job for ages and then suddenly you walk into the office together, it's tough, isn't it? There's been some real pressure on people, so I think it's crucial that we get some fun injected into it and some levity as well.
Absolutely. And do you think there might be a bit of I guess, recognition of how important a team is, that maybe before for a lot of people, there's you kind of, I think you used the phrase, let it happen. And maybe they just did, they just assumed that a few of the team went down the pub together or whatever it is, or chatted about last night's match or whatever they were doing, and that was okay. But maybe because of the changes and what's gone on, that they might think, well, okay, we're going to have to do something ourselves to help that and make that better.
Yeah, I think certainly while it was happening, while we were in lockdown, certainly first lockdown, there was this big, it's kind of like a spirit of the blitz thing, and we're all in it together. We've got to do something, we've got to help. And there's lots of things popping up, like cocktail making and cheese tasting and wine tasting and all these things that people were doing, and team leaders were facilitating get-togethers over Zoom and quizzes and all sorts of things like that. And I think you're right. I think we were like, oh my goodness, this is crazy, we've got to do something. I remember talking to a dear friend of mine who was near to tears, not because she thought that it was going to affect her business. She was fairly certain her business would do well during it, but she was just so worried about her team, and so keen to do stuff to make it okay during the lockdown. And now I think as we're coming out of it, I think there are people who are just thinking, oh, it's all right, we'll get back to normal. And I don't think it's ever going to be quite normal. And I think we've got to be really cautious about getting people back. Do they want to be coming back? Are we forcing them into the office? Do we really need them in the office? And there's questions to ask. And I'd say, get together with your team and make sure that people are keen with that. Otherwise, you'll find people moving on because other companies are saying it's all right, you can stay at home or whatever. So, yeah.
Do you think as well that it's really important for a business, so if they're thinking about holding a team building event, whatever that event or circumstances might be, is how they, I guess, frame that with their employees? And I've been in places where it doesn't excite you about doing it, quite frankly. It's a bit like, oh God, do we have to do this? Whereas that kind of, I guess that phrase team building maybe has that connotation to it, rather than just going out for the day and having a bit of a laugh.
Yeah. I think you're right. That word team building, a lot of people go, oh God, I'd rather just either can I stay at home or B, can we just do some work and get on with the job? And I think there's a lot of personality involved in that, isn't it? How you frame it. And that Ricky Gervais character, you can just imagine him going, we're going to do some team building, guys. Yeah. And being like, oh God, help us, please, no.
Well, I don't know if you've ever watched the American version of The Office, Amy. There is a fantastic episode where they do team building, actually, and it's just like what you said. It is really, really funny.
Cringe. Yeah. I'd say if you're going to do something like team building, get the team involved before you make the decisions, so that they get some sort of involvement in what you decide to do. But think about getting the team involved in why you're doing it. What would your aims be? Not just going, we're going to do this because it looks good. What's the point? Why are we doing it? What do we want to achieve? How would we like to improve? We're going to look at our mission and values for the day, whilst at the same time having a load of fun, some great food, and maybe finishing the day with some beer or gin, which we do as part of Yorkshire Team Building. But I think things are changing. I think possibly, let me ask you, the people that you've seen sort of roll their eyes about team building, were they older or younger?
I can't really think standing out, but probably generally older.
Yeah. There seems to be a definite shift in the millennials. Millennials expect a workplace to do some stuff that's not just work, whereas older people, what do they call them, boomers, are more like, oh, this is a big waste of time, I just want to get my job done and go home.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I just about fall into the millennial category, just sneak in there right the last couple of years of it. So maybe on the cusp of two different generations there. But yeah, I think you're right. And I think, like I said, the reason I asked the question, because I think how you frame it is key to that, and how you come to do what you're doing. as well. You know, the best one I ever was involved in a business where basically the CEO, he lived in quite a nice house with quite a lot of land, and he basically did a version of the outdoor version of Crystal Maze.
Wow.
Garden and basically barbecue and beers. Now, who kind of wouldn't want to get involved in that?
Exactly.
Yeah,
I used to work at one that did something similar. Like they did a festival at their house, and that was absolutely brilliant. Wouldn't a bit of music, a bit of live music, some dancing. But again, it's a commitment outside of work hours that some people cannot do. So make sure you just mix it up and make sure different people get a look in each time you do one.
Yeah, and then the one we did, they did it during the working hours. So basically, it was a Friday lunchtime. There was a coach going at Friday lunchtime, then bringing you back in time for normal work finish time. Or if you want, they put an extra coach on for a few hours later for people who want to come back later. So I think they did it really well, actually.
That's perfect, isn't it? Yeah. Just try not to exclude people. You do get this sort of, oh, well, Janet won't want to do it, but never mind. She never wants to do anything. Well, maybe that's because you don't do anything that Janet likes. Make sure Janet gets involved next time.
Yeah, absolutely. No, that's great. I mean, I think it's a really interesting area. And I think, as the world has changed a lot in the last 15, 18 months, and it'll continue to do so, it'll be really interesting to see how this evolves. And I think I do actually think it'll become a bigger priority for businesses, because
I think it'll have to.
Yeah.
If we're all working from different places, and a lot of places have declared they're not going to go back into work now. So, I'd argue, my personal feeling about it is that if I'd still want to meet my team from time to time. So how do we do that? Where do we do that? What better than a fun day out with a bit of a work-based, slant, but just ways to get to know each other.
Absolutely.
It's really crucial.
No, that's great. So thank you so much for your time, Amy. Really appreciate that. Obviously, you mentioned your websites. If anyone wants to get hold of Amy to find out more, look on the website.
And don't forget those books as well. Read those books.
Read the books. Yeah, no, absolutely. I'll have to get them in time to read myself. Good timing with that. But yeah, no, if anyone can't find Amy for whatever reason, please contact us and I can pass on the details.
Brilliant.
But thank you so much for your time, Amy. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Michael.